it should take about 40-45 minutes. So I'll just keep going. If you need me to stop for anything, then just give me a sign. Okay, so I'm Stephanie Nixon, International Programmes Officer at the University of Manchester, and I work in the team at the university that supports and admits inbound study abroad and exchange students onto our programme. I'll go through various slides that will give you an overview of the university itself, the City of Manchester, the programme of study that study abroad and exchange students take, and then just finish off with some information about support services, so things like housing, counselling and welfare support and so on. So just to give you an overview of the institution itself and the kind of university that we are, it's a big university. We are now the biggest single site university in the UK. We've got almost 40,000 students in total. And of those 40,000 students, round about 10,000 are international students. And of those 10,000 international students, round about 1,000 are study abroad and exchange students doing just a semester or an academic year with us. As well as the University of Manchester being the biggest university in the UK, it is also the most oversubscribed university in the UK. So for some of our courses, for example, for every one place on the degree programme, we have 200 applications. So it is very oversubscribed, and it's one of the most popular universities in the UK for British students to go to. We've invested more than £1 billion over the past 10-15 years or so in things like providing outstanding learning facilities for students. So we've got some brand new state-of-the-art buildings right alongside some of the old Victorian buildings. So there is some incredible architecture and juxtapositions of architectural styles when you walk around campus. And we have more than 1,000 degree programmes in total. Now, study abroad and exchange students obviously don't take a degree programme. We allow them to mix course units. But what us having that number of degree programmes means for study abroad students is that there are literally thousands of individual course units that they can access to make up a programme of study that works for their programme back home. So it is a very historic university. It's the place where Ernest Rutherford split the atom, which started the nuclear age. It's where the computer revolution started in 1948. The first computer was invented on our campus. We have 25 Nobel Prize winners on our past and current faculty and student body. 4 of those Nobel Prize winners are faculty members at the moment. There are 2 physicists and 2 social scientists. And more recently, that kind of tradition of firsts in science and engineering has continued with the isolation of a material called graphene, which is a new material that was discovered about 15 years ago. And it's the lightest material that's ever been known to man. It's 1 atom thick. So the thinking is that in the coming sort of decade or so, it will revolutionise material science, and our mobile phones will be as light as a sheet of paper because they'll be built with graphene rather than the current components. Aircraft fuselage are expected to be made from graphene in the future rather than aluminium because it's so much lighter. So it's a really good institution for anybody that's interested in science and technology. That's just a quick illustration of the Nobel Prize winners that we've had. So you can see it's a mix of physics, chemistry, medicine, economic sciences, and so on. So it is a highly ranked university. The Shanghai Jiaotong rankings from last year, we were 36th in the world, 5th in the UK. So students should expect that it will be a serious academic experience for them. They do have to work quite hard. So the Study Abroad and Exchange programme that we have around 1,000 students doing with us each year, it's a semesterised programme, so students can join us for the fall or the spring or for the full academic year. The semester that works better, to be honest, is just purely determined by which semester we offer the course units that a student wants to take. Because we run course units in one semester or the other, rather than repeating them across both semesters. We require that any students nominated for the programme have a minimum cumulative GPA of 3.0 on a 4.0 scale, and we do ask that students have completed at least 2 semesters of study prior to their admission to the university. All students who are on our programme must take either 50 or 60 UK credits in their semester, and that usually works out to between 15 and 18 US credits, if you're familiar with that as the equivalency. That is what's important to us. It's the total number of credits that a student takes. So we don't mind how many courses a student takes. The only thing that we mind about is the number of credits that they take. So all of our individual course units carry either 10 or 20 credits. So one student might happen to pick all 10 credit courses, so they might take 6 courses with us in the semester, and the 6 times the 10 is the 60. Another student might happen to pick all 20 credit courses, so they might only take 3 course units with us in the semester. For us, it doesn't matter the number of courses. The only thing that we advise students is that if you, as their home university, have a requirement that they must take a certain number of courses while they're abroad, that they make sure that they match the permutations so that they're meeting your requirement for number of courses as well as our requirement for maximum minimum number of credits. Students can pick and mix course units from across multiple subject areas, subject to them having any necessary prerequisites, obviously. It's usually pretty straightforward for students to be granted access to our year or level 1 course units, but some of our year or level 2 and 3 units do have prerequisites, so students need to observe those if that's the case. We do ask all students, obviously, who are from exchange partners to make sure that they route their application to you first, to Calgary's Office for International Programmes, before they contact us, just so that we know for sure that they are your official nominees. Once they've been nominated by you, then they do need to go online and submit a direct application through our online application system as well. So we've got a couple of signature pathways that might be of interest to students who have a particular interest or in a track or field of study. So the first one of those pathways is our leadership and service pathway, and this is quite popular with students who want to go on eventually to work in multinational companies or any kind of global leadership role. So the leadership and service pathway involves students taking 10 of their 50 or 60 credits as a leadership in action unit, which is a taught academic course unit that's delivered by, in the main, external speakers who are all global leaders in their field. So for example, we've had British members of Parliament delivering the programme, the chairman of Exxon, so it's all people who are involved in leading global companies. So that's one track, it's an academic leadership course. And then the second track is a period of volunteering or service learning, community engagement outside of the university. So we can get students involved in community organisations in the city of Manchester, and they can do up to 60 hours per semester of volunteering with that organisation. So if you have anybody that's interested in service learning, it's a really good way for them to maintain that whilst they're abroad. The English language pathway I'm not going to say anything about because clearly it's for people whose first language isn't English, but I'll just mention the pre-law pathway. So this is for students who might particularly want to go on to graduate law school after they've finished their bachelor's in North America. So this programme allows students to take undergraduate law course units whilst they're studying with us. And it's a way that students can see whether they're actually interested in the study of law if they do want to go on to graduate law school afterwards. And then I'll just finally mention briefly autumn assessment. Now, obviously, because of the situation we're in at the moment, this is kind of on the back burner because everybody will be getting an alternative form of assessment, certainly for this coming semester. But autumn assessment essentially is, under normal circumstances, our British semester 1 ends at a time that doesn't quite align with North America's semester 2 start. So our semester 1 ends at the end of January. So if your students if your single semester students have to be back with you in early January, for example, they're not physically able to sit exams in Manchester in our exam period in January. So in those circumstances, we allow students to do a different kind of assessment. So it's usually an additional essay or a piece of coursework or something that means they don't have to sit exams. This year, obviously, all assessments will be online, but just going forward, there is that facility if there's a clash of semester dates. I'm not going to read through all of these, obviously. It just gives a very quick visual overview of some of the subject areas that we have on offer. It's probably quicker, actually, for me just to mention for you the subject areas that we don't have provision in, so that students know whether we're a fit or not. So we don't have any course units in journalism or media studies. We don't have sports studies, fine art, graphic design, catering, anything like that. But pretty much everything else that you can see on that screen is available to study abroad and exchange students. Students might see, if they go on our website, some additional courses. So they'll see things like nursing, electrical engineering, archaeology, sorry, not archaeology, architecture. I think that's probably it. Those subject areas we do offer as a university, but they're not open to study abroad and exchange students. Some of the subject areas that you can see on there do have a couple of restrictions in place. So business, we do allow students to take business course units, but it's not the full range that are available to full degree students. When students go onto our website, they can see the definitive list of business units that are available to exchange students. Some of the discipline areas that we've got on there that are particularly strong are physics, geography, computer science, although computer science is really heavily subscribed. So if any students are interested in that subject area, we'd suggest really early application to be in with a chance of getting a place on those units. Economics, business, history and English also are particularly strong disciplines at the university. So I'll just say a little bit now about some of the support services that we have in place for study abroad and exchange students. So we can run an airport collection service from Manchester Airport back to student halls of residence. That service is currently only available for September arrivals. So if any students are joining us for semester 2 in January, we don't run a collection service by coach, but we have ambassadors at the airport who signpost students to taxis or trains or whichever way they prefer to make their onward journey. The reason why we don't offer it in January is purely a scale reason. So in September, we have 10,000 international students all arriving at Manchester Airport. In January, it's only really our study abroad and exchange students, so we maybe only have 500 or so, so it's purely a scale reason. We run a comprehensive welcome, induction and orientation programme for students in both semesters, so whether they're spring or fall, that programme is delivered for them. And we cover all sorts of things like where to get a mobile phone from, how to adjust to the UK education system, where the nearest supermarket is, how to join clubs and societies. So it's quite a comprehensive transition programme to help students settle in. We also have year-round an international advice team available on campus, as well as our office, the International Programmes Office, and our two offices. Our entire reason for existence is just to support international students. There's something called the International Society, which we recommend all study abroad and exchange students join. It's about £10 a year to join, but they run really heavily subsidised trips and excursions all over the UK. So students can go up to Edinburgh, down to Stonehenge, trips to London for like £10. So it's a really good way for students to meet loads of other people, make loads of friends, and get to see the country really inexpensively. We also run what's called our Global Friends Mentor Scheme. So this is a pre-arrival scheme for students. So once your students have been accepted onto our programme, we can put them in touch with a Manchester student who studied abroad themselves previously last year. They're in touch by email before your student even leaves Canada. So it's possible for them to at least know one person when they arrive in the UK. And then students are fully registered University of Manchester students whilst they're on our programme, so they're eligible to join any student union, athletics union, clubs and societies that they want to, and we encourage them to do that. We also have, and I'll come on to it in a second in the next slide, but we also have a team that's called the Res Life Support Team. That's short for Residential Life. And that's a group of staff, essentially, who live in halls of residence with students. So they provide a really effective first-line welfare support to students in their accommodation. So I'll tell you a little bit about housing now. So we don't mandate that exchange students live in university housing, but we strongly recommend it. We've never had a case where an exchange student who has wanted university housing hasn't got it, providing they meet obviously the housing office's application deadline. So we do strongly encourage students to apply for university residences. All of our residences are single study bedrooms, so there's no room share in terms of someone in your bedroom. But usually somewhere between maybe 7 and 9 individual bedrooms are grouped together in what we call a flat, like an apartment. And that flat shares kitchen facilities, a living room, sometimes bathroom facilities, although students can opt for their own bathroom if they want that attached to their bedroom. So it's a really good way for students to make friends because they'll get to know those other 7, 8, 9 students really well. We don't have anything called international house. So we don't house international students separately and together. Students are completely integrated with British students in their house. They may well live with other international students, but that's just because there are so many of them at the university, not because we design it that way. So it's full integration with British students. We have some housing which is literally right on campus, a 2-minute walk from teaching buildings. The furthest away from campus that a student could possibly live is about a 25-30-minute walk. It's about 1.5 kilometres away from the main campus, so it's still not that far. The housing campuses, though, are all very different. So there are some residences that are really quiet. There are some that are incredibly lively. So students can search for themselves when they're making their housing application for the criteria that are most important to them, so that they can select a residence that's most suitable. One thing that we do just caution students about, though, is that the housing that they'll go into is it's mainly first year students who live in university residences, and they're first year students who are 18 and they're away from home for the first time. So they're so excited and enthusiastic, and they want to make friends with everyone, socialise. So the residences can be very social places. So it is up to students when they're applying to pick if they do want something a bit quieter. Students can select catered or self-catered residences, and just to point out that a catered residence in the UK is nothing like a catered residence in North America. So a catered or a meal plan in North America very often means that students might get a swipe card where they can go and redeem credits on that card at any food outlet, anywhere on campus, any time of day or night. That's not what a catered residence is in the UK. If students opt for a meal plan or a catered residence, it means meals are served in their hall of residence between this time and this time, and if they miss it, they've missed it. There's no refund, they can't use the credits somewhere else. So it is quite a restricted option. So the majority of study abroad and exchange students will select self-catered, where they cook for themselves or with their flatmates, and there are kitchens available in almost all of the residences. Students apply for housing as a separate and additional application to the University of Manchester, and they only complete that housing application after they've received an offer letter from our office confirming their place on the exchange programme. So Manchester itself is, by UK standards, it's a big city. It's probably the second or third biggest city in the UK after London and possibly Birmingham. There are about 2.5 million people who live in the Greater Manchester area. So of course it depends on your point of reference. So if students come from Seoul or Los Angeles originally, it will feel very small. But if they're from a much smaller city, it will feel like a big city. So 2.5 million people. There are more than 85,000 students in the city of Manchester. It is actually the biggest student population in Western Europe. So the University of Manchester has 40,000 of those students, and then there are other institutions as well that make up the difference. So it's a very young, very dynamic, cosmopolitan, multicultural, thriving city that really caters for young people. It's a famous city for sport. There's lots of well-known football teams, for example, Manchester United, Manchester City, but it's not just football. There's cricket, tennis. We have a huge velodrome, which is home to the UK GB national cycling squad. Just rugby, all sorts of things. So there's plenty of opportunity for students to get involved, either as a participant or just as a spectator. So famous for sport, also very famous for music, and there is the most amazing live music scene in the city. Even under current circumstances, loads of music venues have moved their concerts onto an online streaming platform. So tonight I can go on and watch a band doing a gig that's streamed via a Manchester streaming site. It's also very famous for history. As I've mentioned at the beginning, lots of really significant developments have started in the city. It was where the Industrial Revolution started, first computer was invented and so on. We are located centrally in the island of Great Britain, so we're about halfway between London and Edinburgh. I'll come on, I think, in a second. I'll show you a map and explain the time differences to different cities in the next slide. But just to say, it is there's very much like a cafe culture in Manchester. There's loads of bars and restaurants and cafes and theatres and museums. There are something like 40 different languages spoken in Manchester. It is very multicultural. It's known locally as the city where minorities don't feel like minorities, because it's an incredibly welcoming, very tolerant, very accepting city. LGBTQ students, for example, tend to settle very well here just because it is so accepting as a city. And the other thing to say about it is the cost of living is quite considerably lower in Manchester than certainly some of the southern UK cities. So, as I say, we're located right in the middle of the geographic island of Great Britain. It takes about 2 hours, 10 minutes to get from Manchester to London on the train. So very easy to get to and from in a day if a student wants to do a day trip. And there are trains every 20 minutes between the two cities from early in the morning until about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So very accessible. Manchester Airport is only about 15 minutes away from our campus, and the airport itself is a hub for lots of low-cost airlines. So most weekends, under normal circumstances, students will hop over to Amsterdam, which is about 45 minutes away. Paris is about an hour away, Barcelona an hour and a half, Rome's about 2 hours, so very easy for students to get around from Manchester Airport. We've got some beautiful countryside as well. If students are interested in things like hiking and walking and climbing, those kind of things, there's an area called the Peak District that's about 30 minutes away, where it's absolutely beautiful countryside where they can get involved in those kind of activities. And we're about 45 minutes away from the nearest coastline and the nearest beach. So plenty for students to do whatever kind of activities they enjoy. So this slide just visually shows you where our campus is located in relation to the city centre. We butt right up to the southern part of the city centre, so we're very much an urban campus. The city will play a huge role in students' life whilst they're with us. We're not a greenfield campus at all, it is very much a city campus. This is just to give students an overview of some of the guideline costs of living in Manchester. So if a student's joining us for a full year, they should be budgeting about £9,500 for the year for the cost of living. So that's the housing, meals, local transportation, books, stationery, clothing, and so on. For a single semester, it's about £4,500. Now, obviously, there are some students who spend far more than that, some spend far less. It just depends how frugal or extravagant they are. But just to give you an idea of what students should be budgeting, those are the ballpark figures. So just finishing off with the link to our main Study Abroad and Exchange website. And there are two of us in the International Programmes Office who support inbound exchange students. So I'm Stephanie, and then my colleague Natalie is the colleague who processes students' applications, enrolls them onto course units, issues offer letters, and so on. So any students are welcome to email Natalie or I with any questions about the programme at any point. And I think that concludes the presentation. So Ryan, I don't know if there's anything else you'd need me to cover. So I'll stop sharing my screen if I can. Okay.
So a couple of questions that some of the students might be interested in hearing. What is the process like for, because you mentioned putting students into like the courses academics and sorting that out. Can you tell us a little bit more about what goes into like what the timeline looks like once the student is accepted for course registration?
Yeah. So as part of their initial application to us, students complete a form that's called a proposed study plan, and that indicates to us the Manchester course units that they're interested in taking whilst they're with us. The process then is we receive that as part of their application, and we send that and their application materials, so the transcript, personal statement and so on, out to academics who teach in those subject areas that the student wants to study in. The academic then reviews the transcript to assess whether they've got the prerequisites, if any exist, for those course units. And if they feel that they're fine to take the course unit, then we simply enroll the student onto that course unit. If the academic comes back and says, no, I can't accept the student for whatever reason, then we go back to the student and say, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to take that unit. Do you want to send us an alternative? In which case the process repeats.
Okay.
So we enroll them onto those course units, and what happens is we're enrolling them without knowing timetabling information, because the enrolment process happens well before timetables are published and released. So we enroll them onto anything that they've got academic approval to take, and then closer to the time of their arrival, or sometimes actually only when they arrive at the start of the semester, students will be able to view their electronic timetable online. And at that point, more often than not, they will find that they'll have a clash with lectures. So where that's the case, if the clash is between a small group tutorial or seminar and a lecture or another small group tutorial, students can very often adjust the tutorial time so that they can get a different one that removes the clash with the other one. However, if the clash is between two lectures, a student will have to drop one of them and find another course unit to replace it. And so that's a process that students only undertake when they get onto campus. And that's physically, usually, although we're doing it by email this year, but it's physically going to see academics to say, can you accept me onto this course unit instead of that one? But we do all the enrolment for students. They just need to tell us what courses they want us to enroll them onto, and we do it from there.
Excellent, thank you. And then one other one that we try and collect as much information as possible. I was really happy to hear you mentioning information for our LGBTQ students, but also for our students that have accessibility supports. How accessible is your campus, both from maybe a mobility related as well as academic supports? We would love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that almost every building at the university is accessible by wheelchair. It has to be. There are laws in the UK that require all public institutions to make sure that they are accessible to people who have mobility difficulties. So that's the kind of physical disability side of things. If a student has any kind of support needs along the lines of dyslexia, for example, dyspraxia, if they need additional time in exams, all those kind of things, that's all available and arranged through our Disability Advisory Support Service. And there is space even at as early as the application stage for students to flag that on their application, so that our Disability Advisory Support Service pick it up and are in contact with the student before they've even arrived in the UK about the support that they'll need.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?